With a PhD, they're not hiring you to be book smart. That's not why they're hiring you. You're getting book smart so you can get the degree. But the company is hiring you because they want above and beyond the book smart. They want your experience. Good evening, family. All right, we're going to look at an article. It ran October 9th. It's from Business Insider, and the writer is Jacob Zenkula. The article is a millennial with a doctoral degree and over $250,000 in student loan debt says she's been looking for a job for 4 years. She wishes she prioritized work experience over education. Now, real briefly, my family comes from a history of education. My mother has 2 masters. My late mother has 2 masters. My late stepfather, he had a master's but was accepted into a doctoral program before he decided he wasn't going to pursue it. My father has a doctorate degree, and so does my stepmom. I myself have 2 masters. Now, I was raised really on the University of Oregon campus. It was one of the first places I ever remember visiting after being adopted from Vietnam when I was 4.5. So I have literally spent my life watching parents and friends get their cap and gowns, myself included. So I'm a bit familiar with the PhD. Not that I have one, of course, but I am very familiar with what the purpose is. Probably a lot more so than someone who perhaps has not been raised in a family with people who have PhDs. As a teacher, which is me, in my 19th year of teaching middle school, one of the first things my father said to me years ago, he said, don't pursue a PhD. Now, of course, this is from my father who has one. But the reason he said that is the PhD today, in many ways, it's still a, what is it? It's still a very specialized degree in the sense of still not many people have it. Okay. So in that case, it's still a rare breed, kind of, sort of. The problem with the PhD, however, is with all this online stuff going on and all the school scams going on, some of these also included doctoral programs. And it's questionable if some doctoral programs were really all that reputable. Okay, I'm not going to really get into that part of it, but just think in terms of, all the scams that have been going on, including with my own University of Phoenix degree in organizational management. Okay, so we're going to kind of put that aside as far as the fact that it's questionable that some PhD programs may be more legitimate than others. Okay, so we're just going to kind of put that aside and just look at the PhD program itself, and we're going to assume that the school is fully reputable and on the up and up, a state school, something like that. So in this case, she has a $250,000 degree. It's my experience and the people that I've known personally, okay, that $200,000 for a doctoral degree, it's not uncommon. And I think a lot of the reason it's not uncommon is because you have people who, of course, they get their bachelor's, they get their master's, they most likely have not paid either one of those off, then they go on to get their doctorate degree. That could be one reason, very likely. Another likely reason is that they went to, let's say they had their bachelor's paid for, but then they decided to go pursue their master's, and then they pursue their doctorate, but they do it at private schools, which are just an insane amount of money. So for those who've been following my channel, I had my own $110,000 student loan forgiven in 2022. It started at $85,000, and over the 16 years that I was a teacher, I'm now in year 19, but over the first 16 years of my teaching, it grew from 85 to 110. And as a single teacher, I just could not pay off. I could not pay off the student loan and pay off this little condo behind me that I purchased for $100,000 in 2020 and save for retirement. One of those 3 legs was going to have to give, and I chose to go ahead and let this student loan be the one that if I had to carry something into retirement, it was going to be the student loan. I just couldn't see giving up my retirement plan, and I certainly couldn't see living in a place that wasn't paid off. So knowing my own situation and looking at her situation, going, she has $250,000. I couldn't even sleep at night. I couldn't sleep on 110. So she says here she has her doctorate, and now she wishes she prioritized work experience over education. This is stuff I already knew, but I will talk about it with you in the article further, okay? Says here, the initial A, Raspberry, has struggled to find a job in her field of study for the past 4 years after earning her doctorate in business administration. She has an MBA, it seems like. I think that's what that is. I think an MBA is a master's in business administration, so of course this would be a doctorate in business administration. She's a millennial, and she's looking for business jobs while working in a healthcare role to help pay the bills. She says she wishes she prioritized work experience over her graduate degree. So let's go ahead and take a look at this article, and I'll do commentary throughout. Over the last decade, A. Raspberry, and I guess they're hiding her first name, which is kind of odd to do that because anybody can find you nowadays on social media, but be that the case, okay? A. Raspberry has placed a great deal of value on higher education. She has now come to regret it. That regret, she's not alone, and it doesn't take a doctorate to regret it. You can regret it at the bachelor's degree level, at the associate's degree level. Then to say you decided to drop out of school. She is not alone in regrets. We're not ever upset in the sense of the education we got. I've never heard someone say, oh, I regret my education itself. No, we don't. But how we went about doing it, and if we even needed to go about doing it that way, that's what we regret. See here. Raspberry earned a bachelor's, master's, and doctorate in business administration from St. Leo University in Florida. However, she says she struggled to find a job in her field of study over the past 4 years. Oh, geez. She also has more than $250,000 in student loan debt, according to a document viewed by Business Insider. $250,000. Now, you've heard me say this before. We need to think of student loans like payday loans. In fact, I'm going to attach at the end of this a story that I did on payday loans. I will attach that to the end of this video, so make sure you're looking for that. But the reason I think student loans are so similar to payday loans is due to the fact that the student loan, what are you really doing? But you are taking an advance on your education. Hold on just a second. I was checking to make sure the camera was even on. Okay, otherwise I was talking to myself. So you're really, the difference between student loans and payday loans, there really is very little with the exception of the name. But I want you to think about what the purpose of a student loan is. You're saying you want to take your future pay raise, your future pay increases. You want to spend it now so you can get a degree to help you get that future pay raise and future pay increase. And that's all good and well. If the future pay increase, is something you are guaranteed, you're going to be guaranteed to go into that field, and you're going to be guaranteed or nearly guaranteed that you'll be able to earn enough money to not only pay off the student loan, but to also make a profit. It is not a pay raise if you take out a student loan and you just break even over your entire career trying to pay off the student loan. You didn't make a dime. It's not a pay raise if you take out a student loan, you're able to pay off the student loan, but you only make just a few bucks more. Yeah, you made a profit, but if it wasn't anything significant that made it worth going and getting that student loan, then it wasn't a very good investment. She basically went into a payday place, just like a payday loan, okay? She went to the financial aid office and she said the same thing we would say in a payday loan office. I'd like a cash advance on my future. The only difference between the payday loan is they look at the interest week by week, which as we know can get up to a ridiculous 300-400%. And student loans, we look at the interest over 10, 15, 20, 25 years, even 30 years sometimes. So in this particular case, she basically walked in and said, I'd like to take out $250,000. Now remember, she has to make that $250,000 back first before she can even say she made a profit. It says here, Since earning her doctorate, Raspberry has applied for various business roles but little success. She said she'd been forced to expand her job search and explore a new career in healthcare to help her make ends meet. $250,000 student loan so you can go into healthcare because you need to help make ends meet. We'll go ahead and listen to this quote, but then I'm going to give you what my thoughts are, where she went wrong. I thought education was the road to financial freedom, but I was wrong, the 38-year-old who lives in Virginia told Business Insider. She asked for partial anonymity, using the only first initial of her name and last name because of privacy concerns. Let me go ahead and scroll this down. All right. Education, as we know, is not necessarily the road to financial freedom. It is a tool. It's kind of like this. Just because you buy a toolbox, does that guarantee you're going to be able to construct whatever you wish? But I bought the toolbox for it. I have the nails, I have the hammer, I have the jigsaw. All right, I have the sawzall. But does that mean just because you own the toolbox, does it mean you're going to be able to construct with it what you want? The toolbox is just one component. It's one part of what you need to build what you want. But it's not a guarantee that you're going to be able to build it. And even if you are able to build it, it's not a guarantee that anybody wants it. In other words, no one wants to buy it. I can tell you and I've not read this article in advance, I've just really skimmed it really lightly. I can tell you though, from coming from a family that, I'm a third generation teacher, she should have never pursued a doctorate before she had the experience, ever. There's one thing that I'm not going to say never. That's the wrong word to use. I would say 90% of the time. The reason she's having a hard time finding a job, not to be really honest, I really don't need to read the rest of this to tell you what happened. Okay, my whole background, family history with doctorates, I can tell you what happened. So I'm going to kind of guess here. All right, educated guess. A doctorate is a research degree. And a lot of people don't understand this. That's just one component of a doctorate. Another component of a doctorate is that you are to be considered a professional expert, not just in the research, which we could think of as book smart, the academic smart, okay? But you are to be considered a hands-on expert. In other words, I'm a company or I'm an employer, and I am looking for someone who can guide me in such and such aspect of my business. It doesn't matter what it is, and pick any industry you want. I need an expert. Well, we'll take my industry, education, right? I'm a school. We'll just kind of make this up a little bit, but based on reality, okay? I'm a school. I need someone who can research curriculum and can really understand how curriculum works. You may be book smart in curriculum. You may have a degree in curriculum. Have you ever actually had to sit down, write one, and then apply it and sell that idea to a school or to an organization to buy it? In other words, a doctorate, from what I understand in my own family, it is not enough about being book smart. Book smart is just one aspect of it. Of course, you write the dissertation and stuff, right, which can be an easy, 250, 300 plus pages and can take a few years to write, okay? A lot of people don't know this when they pursue a doctorate. It's also why a lot of people drop out of the doctorate program. And that's fine. I think it's better that you drop out when you realize this really isn't what you want, okay? I think that's smarter than just, going through it, racking up $250,000 debt and then saying, I really don't want it. So no shame if you need to drop out. This is why a doctorate is considered so high level, because it is not something that very many people pursue. Yes, lots of people have doctorates, but in relation to the rest of the population, no, not very many people continue to have doctorates. But it's about being a hands-on expert, the best of the best. It's not just about being able to do a thesis or write a paper. The other thing also about a doctorate, if you're going to work, let's say for a school, a university, let's go way high up. You're gonna, you want to be a professor of such and such at, you pick the school. you got to be able to market yourself. In other words, good universities, they're not just looking to hire someone with a doctorate, sit in a chair and teach the students. Matter of fact, I would even venture that that's probably one of the smaller parts of a doctorate. One of the big aspects of a doctorate is you need the ability to be able to write books, publish them, put the school in a really good light. In other words, you do research and projects and you market. It's almost like you have to sell yourself. And in selling yourself, you're also selling the name of the school or the name of the business that you are working for. You see, you notice in the news, if you watch the news, a lot of college professors, really high level college professors, they're not just college professors. They may sit on a board, they're trustees somewhere. They have some other side business that is of equal, priority and importance. This young lady, and I can tell you this without even reading the rest of it, all right? It's just because this is what my family has, raised me, and I've been raised in this environment. She, somewhere along the line, believed that the doctorate in and of itself is what was going to market her to people. It's not. As a matter of fact, when I went and got my master's degree at the University of Phoenix, not the University of Phoenix, that was my master's in organizational management, which is sometimes questionable with all the lawsuits University of Phoenix has had, but we'll put that aside. I got it at the University of South Florida, so very reputable. When I got my master's, I actually said to one of my professors, not adjunct professors, we'll talk about adjunct in just a minute, but I actually spoke to one of my professors and I said, what happens if I would like to get a doctorate in teaching? Now keep in mind, I just graduated with my master's in teaching, had barely even stepped foot in a classroom yet. Okay, I think I'd been in a classroom for all of, maybe 1 quarter, so figure 3 months. And her exact words to me were, we will not issue anyone a doctorate. In other words, we will not accept them into the doctorate program, she said, until they've had 3 to 4 successful years of work experience in their field. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. Again, I come from education background. I said, yeah, because they don't just want to be giving out doctorates to people who have never stepped foot in a classroom. I mean, could you imagine having a doctorate in education and you've never so much as taught a student? You don't even know the grading system that we use. You've never sat and, had a meeting with the principal or an AP. In other words, you have never actually stepped foot in a school, but you have a PhD in education and you're book smart. But you haven't applied any of that book smart to actual academics. Now, I'm only using education because I like to stay in my lane sometimes when it comes to examples, okay, because I understand education. But you could take it and you could apply it to any field. You could be an electrician. Great, you wrote a PhD thesis on being an electrician. Now, here's a hammer and nail. Go fix something after a hurricane. You know what you're doing. They did her a disservice, I can tell you, by allowing her to get a doctorate. But why would they allow someone to get a doctorate when they know it's not really in that person's best interest? Well, that's easy. Remember what I've told you school is? School is a business. It's a business. And unlike what my honest professors did at the University of South Phoenix, where they told me, and I quote, we won't even consider you, they said it nicely, okay? We will not consider you for a doctoral program until you have 3 to 4 years of successful teaching experience. They did not tell this young lady, what's her name? Miss Raspberry. They did not tell Miss Raspberry this, whatever school it was that she went to. I think they say it above. Why didn't they tell her that? Because it's about money. Think about how much money she's forked out in school. $250,000, family. $250,000 for a doctorate in business administration. Oh, she went to St. Leo. That is a whole lot of money for a school to turn down. And so from a lot of school, not that I don't know if the school thinks about it this deeply, but at least on the surface, we can say they're like, hey, she wants to spend her money and do this. Let her do it. We're not going to stop her. So think about that. All right. So she thought this was the road to financial freedom. And she's like many millennials, they thought it was the road to financial freedom. Raspberry's search for work has spanned a wide range of economic conditions in the U.S., from the early days of the pandemic through what turned into a major boom time for job seekers, to a present situation in which the unemployment rate and layoff rate remained low compared with historical levels, but in which employers have nevertheless scaled back on hiring compared with a few years ago. Raspberry shared why she thinks her job search has been so challenging, how she made her career pivot, and her top piece of advice for people pursuing higher education. Quote, most organizations prefer experience over education. Yes. And here's the unfortunate part. If she had had a mentor, a fiduciary, that's somebody who was on your side in the terms of finances. Sometimes I think we should have a fiduciary in education. Somebody who's really looking out for your educational interests and not the financial aid office, okay? Not Navient or Sally Mae, which is, of course, the same as Navient. Okay, they own Navient. Yeah, organizations prefer experience, and that's what I was saying. They want the experience. As a matter of fact, a lot of organizations, they'll pick the master's degree. You tell me you have a master's degree and 5 years experience, I'll pick you over the doctorate with no experience. She had no experience, probably beyond what maybe some hands-on stuff, internship or whatever she's required to do for a doctorate. She's not an expert. Being book smart only is not being an expert. In fact, I'll be honest. I would take someone with the work experience any day, even if that meant they were 1 or 2 degrees lower than what the doctorate was. I would rather, this is just me. I would rather work with someone who has a bachelor's degree in education, and of course a positive attitude, a bachelor's degree in education that has done it for a few years over someone with a doctorate education that has never stepped into a classroom, that doesn't understand the actual stresses of the job, the emotional ups and downs of the job, the technicals of the job. She would have done very well to have had a mentor if she was willing to listen to them. Remember, a mentor is also only as good as what, you're willing to listen. If I had been her mentor, I would have said to her, absolutely do not pursue a doctorate until you've had 5 years, under your belt in the field of the doctorate that you want to go into, or a complementary field, something that complements it, that would be accepted by the industry as, a nice compliment, not 2 things that are totally different, a master's in one thing and a doctorate another, that the industry would say these have nothing to be related. But if they relate somewhere by industry standards, I would say to her, 4 or 5 years in the master's, then pursue the doctorate. She didn't have a mentor, clearly. And remember, the financial aid office family is not your mentor. She says here, after receiving her doctoral degree, Raspberry said one of the first jobs she pursued was an adjunct professor position. Oh, geez. Again, she needed a mentor. I'll talk about the adjunct professor in just a minute. However, after speaking with people in the education field, she decided to change course. All right. She says, I would have to go back to school to take more courses to support a teaching career. She said, adding that she was told she'd specifically need more education-related credits. All right. I'm going to make this note down because I'm going to add something else. I'm going to add a second video at the end. So the first one I said I was going to discuss was payday loans. I write this stuff down because I forget. The second one, it's a video that I did on adjunct professors. Okay. I'm going to attach this one at the end also. Adjunct professors make next to nothing. In fact, an adjunct professor, a lot of people don't know, they typically make less to way less than what a K through 12 teacher will make. In other words, I'm in year 19, my pay is public, so I make $63,000 gross. An adjunct professor, and of course that's with sick leave, medical benefits, defined pension plan, yada yada. An adjunct professor, those people that assist the professor on college campuses, can make maybe $25,000 to $30,000 a year. They oftentimes work on a class by class, pays, they get paid as they go. They might get $2,000-$3,000 payment for a class, and that may sound like a lot until you realize there's no holidays, no sick, no vacation, certainly no tenureship coming around the corner, especially now today more than ever. There's no pension plan, there's no nothing. So they oftentimes, adjunct professors have to bounce from campus to campus. I'm going to attach this to the end of the video on adjunct professors, because it's a real eye-opener to a lot of people. They assume that, well, an adjunct professor, oftentimes they have PhDs, or they might be working, on the last tail end of their PhD. A lot of people think adjunct professors are just right below, tenured professors. No, they're actually, as far as pay, they're lower than middle school teachers. K through 12 teachers can make way more than an adjunct professor can. And this is something my channel will talk about, from time to time, stories about adjunct professors. And so I can see exactly why she said no. And because she has a doctorate in business administration, and let's just say she decided she wanted to go into education, adjunct professor or not. Well, now she's got to go and get a teaching degree. I suspect this $250,000 student loan, and it's not uncommon with people getting PhDs or any other degree, but in this case, we're talking about a PhD. This was highly emotionally driven. This was a personal thing that she really, really wanted. And I understand this. All right. I get it. But unfortunately, what winds up happening is we wind up in education. It is not uncommon. Hey, I'm guilty of it too. We want it so much that we forget the math. So when the math ain't mathin', when it's not working, we don't stop, because it's our emotions that tell us, oh my goodness, we want this so badly. But let's think about it. $250,000 before we tack on the interest. And here's the sad part. She really needs to go into public service, because 10 years of public service and she could knock it out tax-free. Remember, this only ran just about a month ago, okay? About 4 weeks ago. So figure, she could do 10 years in public service, knock out the $250,000. That's probably what I'd do. Guys, I couldn't pay off $110,000. I couldn't pay it off as a single teacher and save for retirement and pay off a condo and make my other bills. I couldn't do it. So yeah, going back to school, and definitely not to be an adjunct professor. As a result, Raspberry said she decided to give up on teaching and focus on finding other roles in her area of study, business administration. But her job search has been challenging. Raspberry said she hasn't landed many interviews, and when she has been turned down. She's had a hard time figuring out what went wrong. She said she's expanded her job search to non-managerial bookkeeping, accounting, tutoring, and human resource roles, but she hasn't had much luck with those either. Let's look at each one of those last jobs here. To non-managerial bookkeeping, accounting, tutoring, and human resources. You need a PhD in any of that stuff? You need a $250,000 degree to go into human resources? And if she's really honest with herself, and I'm assuming that she probably is. Oh, actually, let me just scroll down here. Okay, here it continues. Raspberry thinks the biggest obstacle in her job search is her lack of work experience. Yes, absolutely, 110%. And I'm even going to argue and say it's not her race. If anything, her race is a benefit. She's a black woman with a PhD. I mean, I don't want to get overly, racial, political, yada, yada, but I mean, technically, all the cards are in her favor. I mean, if you want to look at it from a diversity, politically correct hiring point, okay? While pursuing her degree, she gained some entry-level work. Ah, sweet Jesus. Entry-level work with your doctorate. But we see why. Okay, so let me continue back here. While pursuing her degree, she gained some entry-level work experience in banking, human resources, and bookkeeping roles. You need a doctorate for any of that, family? Bookkeeping. I could probably go to community college to take a bookkeeping class. Human resources, banking, associate's degree, bachelor's at best. However, she said this experience might be insufficient in the eyes of employers. Yes, it's going to be insufficient because it has nothing to do with your doctorate in business administration. This has nothing to do with it. Banking, doctorate. I mean, I'm thinking doctorate in business administration and banking. None of these are leadership. None of the, and when you're talking a doctorate in business administration, I'm thinking high-end corporate. I'm thinking, what I used to dream of. I get to wear, a really sharp-looking Brooks Brothers, what is a custom business suit. Yes, they make them for women too. Okay. Brooks Brothers custom business suit. If that company's even in business anymore, a sharp looking Coach bag with, equally sharp looking smart black pointed heels. Okay. Just looking like $1 million. This is kind of what I'm thinking of. And what's she doing? Bookkeeping, basic banking, and human resources. It's not that this experience might be insufficient. It is insufficient. None of these are going to sell a university. Remember, as a doctorate, okay, part of what you want to be able to do is any company you work for, and it doesn't have to be a university per se, okay? I'm thinking in terms of professors, but let's talk about, her having a PhD. Whatever company she is hired by, that company is going to want her to use her PhD to help promote the company. They're not just going to want her to sit in office collecting a 6-figure check or whatever you can get with a doctorate, okay, whatever industry, all right, and doing research all by itself and being book smart. That's not what. Think about it like this, folks. With a PhD, they're not hiring you to be book smart. That's not why they're hiring you. You're getting book smart so you can get the degree. But the company is hiring you because they want above and beyond the book smart. They want your experience, your hands-on experience. They know you got the books, clearly. But what they need from you is not the book. They need your real-world experience. And if you don't have that to sell, then your PhD is just nothing but a piece of paper. It really isn't. I always would say that I came up with this during my master's. I always said, and I just, this is just a little thing I came up with years ago. Okay. I think it was one of those days where I was having an epiphany between the difference between a master's and a PhD. Here's the way I kind of look at it. The bachelor's degree does nothing but regurgitate. We regurgitate information. It's like play hide and seek. I ask the question, you find the information, and we go back and forth. Okay, basic paragraph writing. All right. The master. So think of bachelor's as just we're going to regurgitate. Then I like to think of the master's degree as we're going to explain. I don't just want you to answer the question. I want you to explain your answer, why you think that way. In other words, more critical thinking. So that's the master's. And then I've always thought of the doctorate as you're going to invent. And how are you going to invent questions? How are you going to invent concepts, invent ideas? Well, you're going to use all your academic knowledge combined with your real world experience. And if all you have is academic knowledge with no real world experience to put with it, then you can't invent anything. In other words, you can't help my organization grow. You can give me the bachelor's information, which is you can regurgitate, question, answer, all right? You can give me the master's information, right? I can ask you a question. You can go research it. You can give me pointed thoughts and explain it further in depth. But you can't give me what I need from a PhD. I need you to be able to invent. And if you can't invent, then how can you help my organization? You can't. Because the way we learn invention is through trial and error. And if you have not ever had hands-on experience with an organization where they have valued you enough to pay you, and where we should pay you even more because now you've got all this years of experience. If you've never had trial and error with your inventions, your mistakes, then how can I possibly hire you? I can hire someone with half the education. Forget pay amount. Let's not even worry about, a doctorate person costs more, so that's why they don't want to hire. No, no, no. Put that aside in this case. It's the fact that she's never been on a job that required her to do trial and error that in turn makes her an expert in her field. As a teacher, I may not have a doctorate, but I have 19 years of sitting in front of 13 and 14-year-olds, right? Trial and error. I come up with new ideas. I come up with new strategies. I come up with new game plans. So if I had to invent something, I have a lot of experience to draw on. You see? That's the doctorate. I told you guys, I know that this may seem preachy and lengthy, but you know this channel, all right? I like to deep dive into things because so often, we hear things like, oh, just go get a doctorate. It'll make the world better. This ain't making the world better at $250,000. Oh, just go get a doctorate. It'll give you respect. Let me tell you something. Okay? Here's something else you got to think about with the doctorate. Yes, your doctorate degree is unique. Yes, it is highly prized and cherished. Yes, I would get one if it cost me no money and I wouldn't have sleepless nights working on school stuff. I'm just over. I'm done. My school days are done. Okay? But you have to remember this when it comes to a doctorate. And this is what Miss Raspberry is also discovering. I'm imagining, okay? Because I haven't read this article all the way through. All right? She's discovering that, her doctorate is unique to her. Guess what? When you apply for a job with a doctorate, everybody else that applies for the job also has a doctorate. Yeah. All of a sudden you realize, it's like, have you ever bought a car? And for whatever reason, okay, you think you're the only one with that car, that color, because you swear you've never seen it before, you fell in love with it, and you want to be the unique person on the road. And all of a sudden you get into that freaking car and you're like, wait a minute, every other car I pass on the road looks just like my car, looks just like my color. Okay, I never knew there were so many red Toyota Corollas driving around until I got one, and I kid you not, at my school, there are 2 other people. Literally 2 that drive red Toyota Corollas. And I'm like, I never noticed that until I got one. Well, it's the same thing to some extent with PhDs. You think it's really unique. You have one, and it is unique, and it is special, and it is deserved. And I am envious of those that have one, and I do not. But I'm envious in a healthy way, not in a way that's going to get me to $250,000 of debt. Okay? But all of a sudden you realize that everybody that applies for the job that says doctorate required, all of a sudden you realize everybody else in the room has one also. And now within that pool of applicants, now we're going to go with the best of the PhD applicants. I kind of intersperse the words PhD and doctorate, okay? And all of a sudden she realizes she's at the bottom of the list. Matter of fact, she's not even at the bottom of the list. She's at the part where her degree isn't even being recognized by her industry. Not because her degree's not from a good school. All right, St. Leo, I've heard of St. Leo. I don't think it's anything to really, I wouldn't call it anything to brag about. But, it's not like I have an MBA from Harvard and Yale, one of those, trendy Ivy League schools. But, St. Leo, from what I know, is a solid school. It's been around, okay? So all of a sudden she realizes that nobody wants her doctorate. And again, it's not because of the school. It's because she has nothing to offer other than book smart. Something, that, again, a good mentor could have helped her with these pitfalls. I think before you spend $250,000, geez. And here's the hard part, folks. In a doctorate, you will have an advisor. Okay, an advisor, because a doctorate is so intense and it's requires so much specialized work. You have an advisor that will help guide you, and that advisor also makes sure that as you're doing your doctoral work, that it's being met at the standard that is expected of a doctoral student. Because typically with a doctorate, what winds up happening is, not in all doctorates, but I know in lots of them, your advisor helps you through the doctorate. They're not going to do it for you by any means, okay? But they're going to make sure that what you are doing is in line with what they know you're going to face at the end. And that's usually where you will go for some sort of doctoral interview where, you face a whole bunch of other people already have doctorates. All right. And they may still be thumbing their nose at you. I don't know if they really do that. Okay. But you're not one of them yet. All right. But notice your advisor is not the same thing as a mentor. And this is why I think she needed a mentor. Your advisor is not there. Your doctoral advisor, and this is what she's realizing. Her doctoral advisor was not there to see if this was a good degree for her, to see if she was spending her money wisely, if maybe she was going for the degree too soon. In other words, your doctoral advisor is not necessarily your fiduciary. You know, like in financial terms, a fiduciary in basic terms is someone who makes financial decisions based on what will benefit you first. Not what will benefit the company, but what will benefit you. And that's not the role of a doctoral advisor. So the doctoral advisor, did his or her job and got her through the doctorate. But a mentor is totally separate. Heck, I could have been her mentor, okay? Of course, I've not had a doctorate, so I don't have that experience, so I probably wouldn't make the best mentor. But in some ways, I would have been a great mentor. Because I would have said to her, you don't want to go for this type of degree. And for her to run up $250,000, I'm telling you, family, there was private school in here somewhere. There had, I would bank a Pepsi on it at Wawa's. There had to have been a private school tuition for one or two of these degrees. So that's why she wound up in $250,000 debt. But I would have told her, no way, absolutely not. Do not go for a doctorate. Master's a little bit more forgiving. It's a little bit different, but you can run into those problems too with masters depending upon your field. But ultimately for a doctorate, absolutely not. Not without real world experience. So here she is doing entry level work with a PhD in banking, human resources, and bookkeeping. No insult to any of those fields. I mean, heck, I'm a teacher, but come on. She doesn't need a doctorate for any of those. Ah, sweet. She says, I'm overqualified for most entry level positions, and I'm underqualified for management or leader positions, she said. Ultimately, my degree has been both a blessing and a curse. Well, at $250,000, I'd say it's been a curse. Yes, it's an emotional blessing. It made you feel good about yourself, at least for a while, until the bill came. And I'm telling you, a bill on $250,000 is easy. I'm going to say $3,000 a month. Easy. Raspberry's top piece of advice for people who pursue higher education is to do your homework first. So this tells me she did not do her homework. At least she's honest. She said she wishes she'd spent more time evaluating her school's job placement programs, internships, partnerships, and the employment rates of recent graduates from different fields before she pursued her degree. Okay, so her school's job placement program, that's all good and well. But again, the school is not necessarily going to be looking out in her best interest. The school wants to sell the degree first. Always remember that. Sounds like she just jumped into this degree. In December 2023, St. Leo University was placed on probation after a commission determined that it wasn't in compliance with financial responsibility standards. Oh, Lord, I did not know that. Like I said, I just skimmed. I basically look at the title and just skim it really fast because I like to give a genuine reaction when I read it. However, the university told BI Business Insider that its accreditation remains in effect and it's working to address all areas of concern. Oh, great. $250,000 and your school wasn't in compliance with financial responsibility standards. Remember what I said? All right. A few minutes ago, or maybe a millennial ago. St. Leo University, okay? I think I said something like, there's nothing really to brag about. I've heard about it. Well, we can line up right up there with University of Phoenix. It's still accredited. It's still in business, University of Phoenix, but it's having to deal with issues of a troubled past. Great. So $250,000. Raspberry also recommended taking time to think about the value of a college degree and the best ways to use it to land a job. She didn't think about this. She says, I learned most organizations prefer experience over education. She said, had I known that, I would not have spent so many years in college. This makes me think that maybe she was a first-generation college student, perhaps. Because this, to someone like me, as messed up as I got with my financial understanding of school, as far as the finances of it, I always understood the hierarchy of it. So in other words, I didn't understand the financial of, how income-based loan payments are like credit cards, and if you only go on the minimum payment, you're never going to pay it off. That part I did not understand. But I always understood the bachelor's, the master's, the doctorate. I've always understood that and how that hierarchy works. So in that regards, I get an A+ on that. Oh, a healthcare job is helping to pay the bills during her job search. Raspberry said that in recent years, she worked various part-time jobs to pay the bills. 4 years! 4 years! She hasn't been able to find a job. I'm going off script here. 4 years she hasn't been able to find a job. And now her school is being questioned. I'm going to say, again, what she's also facing is, if a job requires a PhD, she's going against other people with PhDs from schools that are not struggling with compliance. And see, and this is where colleges really, really screw over their students. The students are relying, in part, not just on the students' own hard work, but that the college that they're going to is respected by the industry they want to go into, or even other industries. Because as we know, what is something like 50% or so, 60% will never work in the field of their degree. So there's a reliance that the university that I go to is going to be solid no matter what. Raspberry said that in recent years, she worked various part-time jobs to pay the bills. You can bet at $250,000 that student loan is skyrocketing every month. Every single month. And she's a millennial. I don't know what her relationship status is, but this will definitely, in my eyes, okay, it would affect relationship status too, which is another issue I'll talk about down the road. And I've touched on it a few times on this channel about, dating somebody with $250,000. That's a big tablet to swallow, family. She says here, Raspberry says, it feels next to impossible to work a single job and earn enough money to cover essentials like rent, fuel, electricity, etc. in the state of Virginia or anywhere. It don't have to be in the state of Virginia. You attach $250,000 to it, I don't care where you live. One analysis found Virginia was the 13th most expensive state when it comes to overall cost of living. I think with $250,000, it's not going to matter where you live. I mean, obviously, don't pick Hawaii over Florida, and you might want to, consider Oklahoma before you go to Florida. It all has its hierarchy, but $250,000. Okay, let's see here. She said she's completed a training program to work remotely for TurboTax as a tax expert. Okay. I know somebody who has a bachelor's degree in accounting and works at TurboTax. At the same time, she's also exploring another field, healthcare. Raspberry said that for roughly the past year, she'd been working as much as 80 hours a week as a direct care liaison. She said this involves reviewing the healthcare needs of patients and detailing the support they need. She could have done that probably even on a high school degree. Wow. I picked a position that provided training and certification at no additional cost to me, she said. I find it rewarding and I like the shift flexibility. Again, you could have done that without a PhD. Raspberry said her certification allowed her to work in an entry-level capacity at her employer. Entry-level PhD. Why? Because like I said, she has no real-world experience to go with that PhD. Nothing. Nothing to go with that PhD. And that's the problem. She said the downside was that this certification wouldn't carry over to any other employers, limiting her opportunities in the industry. This is among the reasons she hasn't stopped applying for business-related jobs. Look, here's the bottom line. She's going to have to accept an entry-level or maybe, mid-level business job. If she's looking for a job where they need a PhD, she's basically non-hireable. I'm sorry, 4 years out. And don't forget, PhDs are research degrees. The further you get away from the date of your PhD into a job that uses that PhD, the older and dustier your PhD becomes. It's true. PhD will probably collect dust faster than any other degree. Why? Because a PhD requires you to be it's saying that you're an expert. How are you an expert in a field if you haven't been in that field your entire career? You've never worked in it. And now you're 4 years out from the PhD. You have to dust the cobwebs off. But you see my point? Probably more so than any other degree. You got to keep up on those research skills. You got to keep up on the who knows who and who's mingling with who. I mean, you're supposed to be PhD experts. You're supposed to have a cohort, a little black book of other PhDs. And you all run around with little PhD degrees, and talking over tea and coffee in the early morning hours is where you're sitting in your office chair discussing the latest research and inventions. Our PhD is almost half a decade old. From a school that's being investigated for financial possible questionable activities. Oh, let's continue on. Let's see here. Raspberry said her certification allowed her to work in an entry-level capacity at her employer. She said the downside was that this certification wouldn't carry over to any other employers. Okay, I think I read that paragraph. Another reason is that she doesn't think she was particularly... Let me start that sentence over again. Another reason is that she doesn't think she was paid particularly well in her direct care liaison role. She said she was earning $21.50 an hour despite the long hours. She said the low pay is why she didn't view it as a full-time job. Miss Raspberry, you're only as worth as much as what people will pay for your talent and your skills. Not trying to be insensitive, trying to be realistic. You have no proven skill or talent beyond book smart for a PhD. Therefore, the actual value of your PhD is even less than what you're making in this healthcare job. Why? Because at least in the healthcare job, you are starting to gain experience. See, this is showing that her nose is ever so slightly in the air. Why? Because she says this, and I'll repeat. She doesn't think she was paid particularly well in her direct care liaison role. She was earning $21.50 an hour. May I note that is $21.50 an hour more than what anyone is willing to pay her with her PhD. Despite the long hours, she said the low pay is why she didn't view it as a full-time job. Well, now you see, she gets a taste of what other people who are in this position with the appropriate, without the $250,000 student loan to back them up. She's seeing that this is what the pay is worth in a job with experience. She's also finding that, pay is not high. She entered the PhD program thinking, with her nose ever probably slightly in the air, not because she's a PhD student, but because of what I'm reading here. Okay? She went in thinking, I'm going to have a PhD and I'm going to make all this money. And then she realizes ain't nobody want to hire her. Year 1, year 2, 3, and 4 passes. She still can't get a job. But she's complaining about making $21.50 in a job where someone is at least giving her a chance, but they don't need that PhD from the somewhat defunct school, St. Leo University. So she's not looking at this as a full-time job. She's only looking at it as a part-time job. Well, right now, the healthcare industry is willing to pay her part-time, and her PhD in business administration is paying her squat because no one wants her. Not trying to be cruel, but we're being realistic. She's turning down this opportunity because it's not what she actually wanted. Let us continue. I think we're almost done. Raspberry said she recently changed focus to look for more remote roles, such as the TurboTax opportunity. That ain't going to pay hardly any more than what she's already making, family. She said working remotely would make it easier to keep her healthcare job, reduce her commuting costs, and care for her dog. You know what? I think that's just perfect. Well, okay, I think we're almost done here. Over the past month, Raspberry said she was promoted to a care plan consultant role that pays about $70,000 a year, equivalent to an hourly rate of more than $30 an hour. She said the role also allows her to work remotely. Okay, Miss Raspberry. That's what I make as a middle school teacher. And I acknowledge my $110,000 student loan was forgiven. Remember, family, she's sitting on $250,000. And a care plan consultant role, that doesn't sound like loan forgiveness. So let's say we're making I grossed $70,000 last year with my little, part-time job attached to it. Now give me a $250,000 student loan, I'm still sunk. While she views this as a positive development, she said she'd absolutely continue searching for higher paying roles in her field of study. And as those years go by, her PhD gets more and more dusty. And if she thinks she's going to be hired in a job that pays 70, 80, 90, 6 figures with her PhD in business administration and zip work experience, and the only thing on her resume is going to be healthcare, I think she's going to find it to be quite of a challenge. She says, when I'm not working, I'm online putting in applications for employment, she said. All right, family. Oh, it says there's a correction here. It says an earlier version of this story misstated the type of degree Raspberry earned and her title. Okay, let's take a look. She earned a doctorate in business administration, not a PhD. Okay, and she's a care plan consultant, not a nurse. Oh, geez. All right. That's enough. Family, thank you for joining me. I hope you'll consider subscribing. Also, don't forget, I'm going to put at the very end here, one on payday loans that I did just about a week or so ago, and the other one, the adjunct professor. Hopefully I can find the adjunct professor one. All right, family, my time is up, and so is yours. You have a great night. Bye, everyone.